After playing The Last of Us Part 2, the most pressing question I had was how the show would handle what is arguably the most interesting thing it does. Joel's death was a huge surprise in the beginning, but at least for me, it wasn't the big surprise. As we reach the end of the show's second season and Abby walks out onto the upper deck of the Seahawks Stadium, which is currently named Lumen Field in our world and Soundview Stadium in the game, we're about to find out. We'll have to wait for Season 3 to see how it goes, but it doesn't look like the show is changing the formula. Each day Dina and Ellie spent in Seattle opened with an on-screen title. Seattle Day 1, Day 2, and Day 3. Even though the season's penultimate scene was Abby tracking Ellie down to the theater on the third day, this closing shot takes us back to Day 1. This seems to be confirmation that Season 3 will revisit the days in Seattle leading up to the theater, only this time we'll experience them from Abby's perspective. This is what happens in the game, and even though I haven't played a ton of them, switching the character you're controlling seems to happen fairly often in these bigger titles. For example, in the first Last of Us game, you switch from Joel to Ellie after he gets sidelined at the university, and play through the part when she meets David and subsequently has to escape. In part 2, you even play with Abby some in the beginning before you know who she is. But what's different with the switch after the theater is that by that point, she's squarely the story's antagonist. Knowing she killed one of the main characters stirs up some feelings. It feels somewhat wrong to walk in her shoes, and that's part of what they're going for. It's that idea of everyone being the hero of their own story and all of that. And while I wasn't excited about it, I was surprised enough to want to see where they were going with it. Plus, in a game, it just keeps going. There are no week-long breaks in between episodes, or in this case, years between seasons. I won't get into future spoilers for the game, but I wondered how they would set that up and approach it, since playing as a character is such a different experience from passively watching them on TV. As far as the setup is concerned, the show revealed that the doctor in Salt Lake was Abby's father much earlier than you find out in the game, and had Nora tell Ellie about this. That part doesn't happen in the game at all, and you presume Ellie just thinks Abby killed Joel because he extinguished any chances of using her immunity to create a cure. The choice probably makes sense, as it should make the switch to Abby's perspective a little less jarring after a long break between seasons. For the approach, we'll have to wait and see. There is a chance that since we've already seen these days from Ellie's perspective, we already know what she was doing. We followed her the whole time, so she won't be involved with most of the third season. Possibly the whole third season if they end up doing 4. Catherine O'Hara, who plays Gail, told Variety when they asked if her character would be back that she wouldn't be involved with Season 3. She said Craig Mazin told her that it was Abby's season, so take from that what you will. Ellie was involved with the Season 2 finale, which is what we're here to discuss. And I guess going into this one, the big question I had was how the perspective changes after seeing Joel and Ellie's last conversation. In my previous video, I talked about how this didn't happen until the end of the game. So I kept thinking about how tragic it would be if, because Joel was the only person who knew for sure, Ellie never learned the truth about what happened in Salt Lake. After episode 6, we know that isn't the case. But even though Joel's return made for one of the series' most memorable episodes, it also highlighted what his loss took from Ellie. She gets to this in the finale when she's arguing with Jesse after she figures out the meaning of the cryptic answer Nora gave up after she tortured her. After figuring out she's at the aquarium, she wants to go straight after Abby. And Jesse wants to help Tommy. As they go back and forth, it comes out that Jesse voted against the trip to Seattle at the Jackson Council meeting. This was a surprise to Ellie, and to me for that matter, but his reasoning made sense. He didn't think seeking vengeance was in the best interest of the community. This was set up in the previous scene in the bookstore when he told her about a lost chance at love, after she brought up not knowing what to say about the relationship she's developing with Dina, who is his ex. He's not that broken up about it because he fell for a woman who passed through Jackson with a group heading to Mexico. He says he loves Dina, but not like Ellie does. This encounter he had made for the best 2 weeks of his life, and the new woman wanted him to join her group so they could be together, but he felt obligated to stay in Jackson. The people there took him in and raised him, and he knows they're all counting on him to become the next Maria. The main point, and he says it in a way that distinguishes him from Ellie, is that he was taught to put other people first. This statement provokes a reaction. Ellie calls him St. Jesse of Wyoming and implies that he thinks he's better than everyone else. Something that comes out again when she argues that Tommy can take care of himself and would want her to track down Abby. Jesse voted against coming after Abby's group because he put the community's needs above an individual's, and him throwing this in Ellie's face moves her to scream, "Fuck the community," which basically proves his point. And I think I should say he is right. Objectively speaking, the greater good should surpass self-interest. But Ellie's dodge brings us back to why I started down this road to begin with. The only community she ever had before she got to Jackson was Joel. That's the detail that makes this story work. Her immunity and the experiences they shared created a situation that cut her off from everyone else, at least concerning major parts of her life. Now she just wants to make the person responsible for taking that away pay for what they've done. And after going through the story with her, it's hard to blame her. In the end, it doesn't even seem like Jesse does. He won't go with her because Tommy's safety is his priority, but he doesn't try to change Ellie's mind when confronted with her conviction. All of this loops back to Gail and Tommy's conversation in episode 3. The idea of nature versus nurture, and her argument that Joel and Ellie were probably always the same, and that being what drew them to each other rather than Joel rubbing off on Ellie. While this is interesting as far as Ellie's decisions go, something to keep in the back of our mind when we think about what she's doing, the contrast in her belief systems compared to Jesse's is kind of besides the point. We didn't follow him, or in the case of the game, play as him, like we did Joel and Ellie, and he won't be sticking around anyway. And what happens to be one of the rawest deals in recent memory for a TV character? Captain Wyoming swooped into Seattle from Jackson to save Ellie and Dina because it was the right thing to do. After finding out he was going to be a father from his ex's new girlfriend, who, did I mention, he had to drop everything to travel to a war zone to save? After being that guy and stepping up to put others first, he was rewarded with a shot to the face when Abby followed them back to the theater. Just fully dispatched unceremoniously. Something the show did much better than the game was fleshing out Dina as a character and spending more time developing her relationship with Ellie. A couple of weeks ago, I went on a friend's podcast who hadn't played the game. Since we were discussing the first episode after they hooked up, he asked if finding this new character that Ellie could confide in might not give her a reason to rethink her path of revenge. I think it's a good question, and one the story wants us to ask. I know I was thinking the same thing when I was playing through the game. Even though she chose to go after Nora rather than head back to check on Dina immediately, when she returns at the finale's beginning, she's what's on her mind. Ellie's worried about Dina and the baby and doesn't stop to explain where she went when Jesse asks. After discovering they're okay, we watch as Dina dresses her wounds while Ellie tells her what happened at the hospital. She tells her everything, including how she was surprised at how easy it was to torture Nora. After she tells her she left her alive, Dina says maybe she got what she deserved. It's plain that she doesn't feel bad about it. Ellie isn't so sure, so she tells her what happened in Salt Lake. And even though Dina was 100% on board with making the wolves pay in the last episode, when she hears this, she says they need to go home, like right away without any hesitation. Sure, she got shot with an arrow. That changes things and puts things in perspective. But if we're talking about perspective, what seems more important is that when she learned the truth about what Joel did, it made her question how just the mission is. After seeing how close Dina came to dying, Ellie can only shake her head in agreement. The next morning, things are tense with Jesse as they head to the rendezvous point. It comes out that when Dina refused to drink from his flask as Jesse was getting ready to push the crossbow bolt through her leg, he put it together that she was pregnant. He also mentions that Shimmer is okay when he explains how they found them, and it's kind of funny when he adds, "Not that you asked about her," since we haven't heard about her horse since the guitar scene in the music store. It starts raining, and while they take shelter in a garage, they see the WLF guy from the Isaac flashback, the one that was green at the beginning, chase a young Seraphite down. They hit him with the butt of a rifle, strip off his clothes, and drag him away. Ellie wants to intervene, but Jesse stops her. They're outnumbered. It's not their war. Everything he says makes sense. He's going to be a father, so he has to make it out of Seattle alive. This turns out to be Ellie's counterpoint later when they have their fight. All he talks about is community, but he was willing to let this kid die because he wasn't a part of theirs. She does have a point to a certain extent, but the main takeaway here is that these choices and decisions they're forced to make in the post-cordyceps reality aren't as simple as they seem on the surface. This is followed up by a conversation at the WLF forward operating base between Elise and Isaac. In the flashback, Elise was established as a soldier dedicated to their cause who did the thing Joel couldn't do. She sacrificed her son when he knew he was infected and asked her to seal up the basement of the hospital. It's not a one-to-one, but that is the point. She's someone Isaac can count on. Someone you would expect to do the thing that's best for the group. We learn that Isaac needs everyone on board because they're planning a big operation, and he's distracted by Abby's absence. Elise can't figure out why he's making such a big deal about it. Abby's a good soldier, but they have a lot of them, so it's not the end of the world that the Salt Lake crew skipped out ahead of what looks like some serious bloodshed. Isaac soberly explains that there's a good chance Elise will be dead by morning, and an even better chance that he will be too, and he planned on Abby being the one to take over the wolves in the worst case scenario. This tells us a lot we didn't know about Abby. She's competent, capable, and stands out as a potential leader in a large militarized community. Before that, she was just a brutal murderer who Joel had inadvertently wronged. Killing him did take dedication, and revealed that when she puts her mind to something, she's gonna follow through, and it revealed an obsession that she had for him. But from Isaac's perspective, she's an ideal soldier and a potential successor. When Ellie arrives at the edge of the water to make her way to the aquarium, she witnesses the force the wolves have put together firsthand. The only thing on her mind at the time is finding Abby and getting back to Dina, so she just sort of waits until they pick up the soldiers on the dock so that she can go for the boat that's tied up there. Their fleet is impressive, as is the use of lightning in this sequence to set the mood. The shots of the city and the Ferris wheel in the distance look amazing as they appear in the flashes, and underline how nothing, including a giant wave, is going to stop Ellie from reaching her objective. While I thought most of this was finale worthy and was glad they took things to this level to set up the final confrontation, the one thing I couldn't make sense of was what the interlude where the scars almost lynch her told us we didn't already know. We saw a similar scene in the last episode where we saw that everyone in this faction of the Seraphites was on board with this ritualistic killing. The woman and child kind of serve as the opposite of the father and daughter we met on the trail in episode 3, who were our introduction to the scars and hinted at a different faction. But beyond that, considering we know Ellie isn't going to die here, I couldn't see why this scene needed to be included. I figure it must be to set something up for later. And it wasn't until I went back to take notes on the final theater scene that I noticed you can see rope marks around Abby's neck, similar to what Ellie will have on hers when she wakes up tomorrow, which made me think that it'll probably be connected to that in a roundabout way. Regardless, the alarm from their village tells us that Isaac and his troops must be attacking that, and the Lynch and Scars decide that's more important than relieving Ellie of her guts. She doesn't miss a beat, and it's almost comical how quickly she goes from getting dumped out of the boat to almost strung up to back on the water pushing forward. She finally makes it to the aquarium. It's empty and dark and spooky, but it also looks like in the daytime it might be super cool, like the museum Joel took Ellie to. Not in the room she passes through where it looks like some field surgery took place though. There are bloody rags everywhere, and you can see a saw with blood on it when she's shining her flashlight around. The only member of the Salt Lake City crew we don't see that's name checked in this episode is Manny, and the rest of them all appear to be relatively intact when Ellie sees them, so there's no indication of what happened here. We're reminded later that, like Nora, Mel seems to know her way around medical stuff. Remember, she was the one who put Dina to sleep and tourniqueted Joel's leg to stop him from bleeding out so that Abby could have more time to torture him. As Ellie approaches the room where she finds Owen and Mel, we can hear them arguing about his wanting to go behind enemy lines for Abby. What they're talking about isn't exactly clear, but we know their enemy is the Seraphites. We also know that Elise mentioned that they still hadn't found Owen when she was talking to Isaac about Abby's going missing. As far as we can tell, Abby disappeared. Isaac and Elise didn't know where she might have gone. Nora assumed she'd be at the aquarium. Mel and Owen, who also were missing, were there instead, and Owen wanted to go into Scar's territory to look for her. From what Abby says at the end, she does make it to the aquarium sometime after Ellie got there, and then shows up at the theater to shoot Jesse in the face with rope marks on her neck that indicate someone tried to hang her. It's a lot of things for season 3 to fill in the blanks on, but before we get there, Ellie does confront 2 of the former Fireflies who were present in Jackson for Joel's ending. She gets the drop on them and tries to pull Joel's move of telling one to point at Abby's location on the map so that she can threaten them both by saying she'll kill them if the other person doesn't point at the exact same place. It's one of those they grow up so fast moments until Owen tries to play hero and go for his gun. He was under the assumption that she'd kill them either way, but she insisted she wouldn't. She says she's not like them, which doesn't exactly make sense considering they let her live, but the point seems to be that she feels justified in her pursuit of Joel's killer after they made her watch it happen. When it comes down to it, Ellie is quick enough to shoot Owen in the neck with Joel's revolver, but the bullet also hits Mel after it passes through his body. When she starts to bleed out through her neck, she reveals she's pregnant and tries to guide Ellie through doing an emergency C-section on the floor. This obviously brings Dina to mind, and I guess I should point out that they concealed her pregnancy completely until she was shot accidentally. Ending a person and her unborn child isn't something Ellie set out to do or did on purpose, and by her reaction when she can't save the baby, we're not meant to think she's that far gone yet, but it is an unintended consequence of her choices and something she can't take back. It destroys her, and seeing the body shakes up Jesse when he gets there with Tommy. The gruesome scene they leave behind is the one Abby will discover, and it's what she's thinking about when she arrives at the theater guns blazing. There isn't much resolution to what we see there except for Jesse. I know I've mentioned it multiple times, but every time I watch it, it's just such a brutal ending for the guy. Tommy is on the ground but still alive. Dina isn't in the main area. She's probably off in the dressing room. Ellie gives up rather than putting Tommy at risk and tells her who she is. She knows why Abby killed Joel. He did what he did to save her, and she's the one who killed her friends, not Tommy. So she's the one Abby's looking for. She recognizes Ellie and says she let her live and she wasted it, and then she pulls the trigger as the scene ends, cutting to the shot of her at the stadium. That sets up a pause in the current timeline, and ultimately season 2 develops Ellie's perspective before these two characters meet. The storm imagery leading to the aquarium is fascinating because Ellie and Abby have both been established as forces of nature. Abby rolled into Jackson and devastated the sanctuary that Joel and Ellie found there. Even though Seattle is somewhat the opposite of Jackson, Ellie raged through there and started to undo the family Abby put together after losing her father. Their pursuits and their coming together mark a point of no return, creating a situation where no one is winning. Loss begets loss. There's a cycle at play here. And while you wouldn't necessarily condone what anyone's doing, you can see where it's coming from. Dina is the best example of how perspectives can shift within the story. And I really appreciated how Jesse's beliefs contradicted how Ellie sees things. In a story that spends so much time focusing on how the worst of humanity's tendencies come to the surface in times of sustained crisis, it's nice to see that some people can still look past it and imagine creating something better. While I've joked about his ending, I like that what was good about him isn't what did him in. He wasn't necessarily punished for being a good guy, and that he wasn't prepared or that he wasn't willing to go to the same lengths that the other people were, or something along those lines. He knew the risks, he made an informed decision, and still did what he thought was right. And unfortunate timing is what spelled his end. Before Abby came to change everything, Ellie and Jesse made peace in a conversation that's bound to stick with her. She acknowledges he's a good person, and he reciprocates, saying despite differing views, he knows she'd do the same for him. There's some forgiveness there, which is a great way to send him out, but as with most things, you're left to wonder if it's enough. I mentioned the Scar scene on their island felt a little tacked on, but if you think about it, this was the very moment most people would stop. But a near-death experience doesn't give Ellie perspective, she just keeps going. If we look back at episode 6 and Joel's final words to her, his hope was that she might someday do better than he did. He was talking about being a parent and how that changes things, but it can be applied more generally, such as not repeating the same mistakes he made. She has all the makings of a different path right in front of her in Dina, but in the finale, she puts that aside to choose the path of vengeance at every chance. It makes you wonder if she is too far gone. While that's been the trajectory for most of the season, the closing shots at the theater at least present the possibility of change. Seeing Abby show up is like looking in a mirror in a way. And confronted with the loss of Tommy and Dina, Ellie doesn't keep pushing forward for the first time in the story. She gives herself up, and now we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. This is kind of bookended by her revealing the truth about Seattle to Dina earlier. In that case, she didn't get glowing acceptance. She got a reaction similar to what Joel got from her whenever she realized what really happened there. I don't know what that tells us about what Abby will do, but it is something to think about. I guess the gunshot at the end is supposed to be a cliffhanger, but I'm not sure what we should make of it. I think the idea that she let Ellie go and she wasted the opportunity to live her life is what resonates the most, so I haven't spent much time thinking about it. There is a small detail in the finale that turns out to be my favorite. When they first got to the bookstore, Ellie picked up a copy of The Monster at the end of this book as a gift for Dina's unborn child. This is something I remember from my childhood, from when you don't have a lot of things you remember directly. Like most kids, I love the book, which is essentially just the main character, Grover, trying to stop you from turning the pages because he's frightened by the idea that there's a monster at the end of it. When you get there, you find out it was him the whole time. And I don't know, it doesn't seem like something they would introduce if the concept wasn't relevant. The most interesting thing the game The Last of Us Part 2 does is force you into a different point of view. It works as well as it does because of how video games work. And by saying it works well, I don't mean in the sense that it created an experience that was universally loved. It was actually quite polarizing, to tell the truth. It did create an unforgettable experience, though. We'll have to wait and see if the show can develop a similar experience. And I think that's a great place to leave things. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.